Good afternoon, it's May 8th, and we're here for the City Council Transportation Subcommittee. And tonight we're going to be talking about no parking, place cards, and one-way streets. Could we have a roll call?
Chairman Laurie,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy,
Here.
Councilor Madonza.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. In attendance tonight is City Councilor Rita Mercia, and I thought Resna was here. And also Edna Matrick, Adam Bakey, and Eric Eby. We can start the proceedings. And anyone?
Yeah,
Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we exclude the, is it the suburban areas, Adam, from the ordinance?
Well, we had 2 meetings ago, I think, in response to the council's request for an analysis of where in the city the placards are more heavily utilized and where they are less heavily utilized. We had identified that the suburban zoning districts seem to have considerably lower usage of the signs than the other residential districts in the city. I think that is probably a combination of reasons for that. Predominant among them is likely that there is less demand for the on-street parking or less competitive demand for the on-street parking in many of those areas, which may be why many of those property owners have chosen not to seek them.
Thank you. And so I would make a motion that the suburban zoning districts be excluded from the ordinance.
No, would you like to speak, Councilman Donka?
Yeah, well,
The motion needs a second, I think, if it's,
do you want a second? No.
There's no second on the motion right now. Councilman Donka?
Well, just speaking in general, due respect to the council's intent, as I see it, if Beacon Street, for instance, were in this suburban zone, then this could be a way to solve that problem. But it's not. It's traditional single family, so this would not help there. And there are only a few placards in the zone, and there are no complaints from those areas. So I'm just concerned that those few that are there would then maybe do have a valid reasons for using them, and that by prohibiting them there, that we would be creating another problem for ourselves. So since there are no complaints, in my view, there's not a problem to be solved. In the future, maybe, but not right now.
yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Kennedy?
you have the zoning map there, is that correct? Is it in the traditional? Beacon and Third, I think.
Well, Beacon Street itself, actually, for a portion of its length, is traditional single-family on the west side and suburban single-family on the east side. And then that's at the southern end. And then from basically just south of 3rd Street, all the way to, you get up toward the Dracut area, almost to Dracut, it is essentially traditional single-family on both sides, although there is a couple areas where it's traditional 2-family or traditional multifamily. So much of the Beacon Street area, including the area around 3rd and Beacon, is not in a suburban zone district.
So if I were to make a motion to exclude suburban zoning districts and traditional single-family districts, would that get a second from this subcommittee?
Well, the traditional will have a huge number of placards, and I mean, most of them are in urban, but even the traditional has a large number in areas that they're probably needed. So we would be removing the privilege from a large number of people holding the placards right now. So I'd have a concern without reviewing that further, but
Okay.
I think that'll be a huge disruption in that area.
Okay. I kind of agree with that, which is why I just wanted to limit it to suburban zoning districts. And I think there aren't many people that have them there anyways, and if there's not any complaints, I don't see the harm in trying that. I would just remind the subcommittee that the reason that this matter even came before us in the first place is because they were residents who lived on Christian Hill that thought that there was no need for there to be cards in their area. So without getting a second on this motion or taking any action on this matter, we are ignoring the original purpose of the subcommittee of these meetings.
If I could, one of the concerns I have is when you look at the maps where the signs are and where they're not drawn up as our maps are in traditional neighborhoods. If you go just past Beacon Street on the right, there's probably 8 signs, I think, 8 or 10. So there's not a lot of call for them in those areas. But where do the lines actually break up? And that's what concerns me. If those lines in those neighborhoods go into areas where there's 2 families or where there's a need for them, that's my major concern, and that's why I didn't second the motion. You go up to certain areas of the Highlands, it's the same. You've got very few place cards out there, and the same in Belvedere. My concern is, all due respect to Centerville, is if you use the traditional lines, they weren't formed for this reason, so it could create a problem, and that's my major concern. If we wanted to draw up lines specifically for this, you know, that's a whole different ballgame. But we're using maps that weren't designed for this purpose, and that's my major concern. All set?
If I can make a motion.
Sure.
Well, I would like to make a motion to proceed with the previous items we have recommended.
Okay.
In order that we get something done with this and see how that works to address the issues that have been brought forward. And after a year's time, where we've had the initial renewal and then another renewal period, then we can see if that's solving any problems or if we still have additional problems to deal with.
I'd second that. Roll call?
Excuse me, could you read the motion then?
Well, the motion is to proceed with the items that have been previously recommended by the subcommittee.
Where we stand now.
There were, I don't have the list of them unfortunately, but at previous subcommittee meetings, there were a number of things that we'd recommended to proceed forward with, which included annual renewals of the placards. We had a senior, we were going to provide a senior discount or a senior waiver if they're eligible for the senior abatement on their taxes, then they'd also be eligible to waive the fee for the renewal.
Right, Mr. Chairman.
And just to finish, also the definition of where the space is, how long, and based on where the sign is placed.
Mr. Chairman?
If I could, just for a second.
Sure.
Originally, we came up with three areas where we agreed, and that was the parking would be 20 feet long, the sign would have to be in a stationary location, and if you didn't have 20 feet of frontage, you couldn't get a card, and I think those 3 passed. We talked about, and I don't know if they were approved, was keeping a $10 sticker, having a renewal fee of $10 and waiving it for people 70. I don't know if we approved that because I was looking at the age of 60 to try to keep it, after the age of 60, no renewal fees, but I don't know if, I forget if we had voted.
Mr. Chairman, my recollection is that we voted on everything except for 3 matters, and we did that at the last meeting. There were only 3 matters that were held in abeyance for this meeting, and one was whether or not to exclude the suburban areas,
Right.
and that motion did not get a second. The second matter was the fees and whether they should be $10 or not. And then the third matter was what to do with the streets where parking's allowed just on one side of the street.
Okay,
And those were the three. So those are the only three matters before us, I believe. And so now because we didn't get a second on the suburban zoning districts, there's only two matters before us. So,
I don't agree. I don't believe we took votes on the $10 fee we agreed with. I don't know if we took a vote on the age of 70. I was hoping to keep it at 60, and I don't know if we took a vote on that officially.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying that we took a vote on that. I'm saying that those matters are still before us. The fees
Okay.
and the one-way streets are still before us. But what we did vote on was, the 20 feet or whatever
Right.
for the parking space and
Exactly.
those types of things.
That's
So-
what it said. Okay. So, Councilor Mercia?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that was my concern. What Councilor Kennedy has said, that's how I recall it as well. So we're into the second phase, second part of the,
Right.
what we're discussing, and that is the fee. So I was concerned. And my question is $10 appropriate enough to maintain the cost of bringing the new signs forward for people that don't have any? So, I mean, I don't want to create a sign that costs $20 and we're charging 10. So that's my concern right there. So that's all my question.
Mr. Chairman, I think the information that we got at the previous meeting was that the cost of the sign was roughly around $5.
Yep.
And so if we made it $10, it was gonna be $10 per year, I think. But if you were, I thought that we were talking about people that would be eligible for the real estate, the senior citizen abatement for real estate would also be eligible for free, they wouldn't have to pay, they'd get a waiver on the $10.
Thank you.
Okay, let me make this suggestion, if it gets a second. Let's start taking votes. We're gonna, if we may, right now, take a vote on the fee, if I have a second. Okay, we have a second,
What's the motion?
that we keep the fees at $10 for the parking signs.
Okay.
Okay? Roll call?
Chairman Laurie,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you. Now, let's look at the renewal fee. We had talked earlier about a $10 renewal fee and excluding at a certain age group. Personally, I'd like to see it at age 60. A lot of people at that age probably need the parking in front of their house. It's when you start beginning to have physical problems, you retire at the age of 62, 63. We had talked about the age of 70. I feel more comfortable at 60. One item I would say, if we're going to have a renewal fee of $10, would that be a sticker that is mailed back to the?
Well, what we have not made a determination of exactly what system would be used, but what we believe would likely be, if the council doesn't provide specific direction, would be a sticker system larger than what's used on license plates, but similar to what's used on license plates, where there would be a sticker with the year that it expires, and those stickers would change color every year, so it would be easily recognizable by a law enforcement officer who was attempting to help enforce, to know whether a particular placard was valid that year or had not been renewed.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to make a statement? Okay.
My name's Marie Brown. I live at 380 Christian Street in Lowell. And I just want to refresh everyone's memory. Back in January, when the first subcommittee meeting was Councilor Mercia, Councilor Broderick, and Councilor Caulfield. And they worked diligently to craft language that would say, a placard for the dwelling,
Right.
multifamily, kids that are getting their license, a placard for the dwelling,
Right.
a sticker for every registered vehicle with the same address to be put on those vehicles. So we got the placard Then we have a sticker for everyone who's a resident who drives a car in the dwelling. And I just want to make sure, when we came back again, it was suggested that that would be tweaked. But that was right on the track, right on the target. Now, when you get to the part where we're going to renew our placards and our stickers, then a copy of every registration for that dwelling should come into you. And then the fee be paid. I don't think it's unreasonable for $10 per sticker per car. It costs you more than that to drive to Boston if you're buying gas. So I want to make sure that that language stays in what you're going to vote on. So that needs to be something that is done. I have a few other points to make. You've already passed on one of them.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if I should sit down and wait.
Oh, no,
or-
please, please.
Okay, so now we're talking about suburban areas. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up when I heard the maps that we're using for the purpose of including or excluding are not for this purpose.
They weren't.
Okay,
When we developed
so-
those.
So, you know, we're such an old city. All these things that are coming back now that need to be readdressed, because what we had in 1960 is not what we had in the 80s, which is when this was first instituted, which is not in 2012. So before anybody makes any big decisions on what's suburban and what is not, maybe we need to have some new lines drawn. And also I was thinking about, you know, the suburban area. Well, you know what? No one's complaining in the suburban area. Well, guess what? That's why we're here. We live on Beacon Street, and we are the ones that are complaining, but yet no one's complaining. I don't understand that. Maybe that needs to be rethought again. And let me just say, the area of Christian Hill that we're talking about is the road less traveled. Beacon Street is a dead end. And the part of Beacon Street we're talking about, there's nowhere to go unless you're home. But I will say, the bottom of Beacon Street, where I happen to live, is beautiful fields. There's a K through 4, the Krista McAuliffe School is there. The Robinson Junior High School is there. We have 2 Little League fields. We have a Senior League field. We have a volleyball court. We have tennis courts. And do you know something? There's one house in that section of Beacon Street with a sign. Everybody's neighbors there. Everybody knows there's gonna be cars in front of their house because they're going to watch their kids play and support them, okay? So this is not anything to not allow people. So when you're making your decisions, please think about all of those people at the bottom, at the level of Beacon Street, who say, you know what, good for them for watching their kids and coming and supporting. And the 4 or 5 or the 14 we have scattered throughout the rest of that hill. Now, why is that they would need a sign when they have driveways? Because they're at the top of the hill. So maybe it's a good thing the suburban area was not decided upon tonight, Because I think there really does need to be some new lines drawn.
May I? Let me address this because I'm sure those were addressed right at my comments. Those maps that we have there, suburban and non-suburban, were they made up for the parking tickets?
The maps that we're referring to are when we refer to the suburban areas or the
Right.
traditional areas, are the city's zoning map. And
Thank
they were created in 2004 in response or in conjunction with and in response to the master plan, which called for the city to redraw the zoning districts of the city to reflect the existing character of the development. Really, we're not specific to parking.
Right.
When we did an analysis earlier this year, a few months ago, at the request of this subcommittee, of looking at what different ways could we sort of analyze the issuance of existing placards, we looked at it a lot of different ways. We looked at it by census tracts. We looked at it by established sort of neighborhoods as the neighborhood groups recognize them. We looked at it by zoning and various other things. And the strongest correlation that we could find between the demand for the placards and any other kind of way of sort of drawing lines on a map was actually the zoning districts. Right. And in fact, the correlation is quite strong. And we had provided this analysis that the suburban zoning districts, in no district that is a suburban zoning district, are there more than 2% of the parcels that have requested the placards. Right. Similarly, in most of the commercial districts and industrial districts, there are 2% or fewer of the parcels that have requested these placards. However, in the urban and traditional districts, zoning districts, which are all residential or mixed-use districts, you see percentages like 43%, 66%, 53%, 26%, 51% of the parcels requesting and having these placards. And what that tells us is that while the zoning districts were not drawn for the purpose of this, for on-street parking, a lot of the same factors that led to the designation of some of these areas under these zoning districts are not inconsistent with why someone might want these placards in terms of levels of density, nature of the sort of the type of development of the property, the approximate proportion of off-street parking, and so forth. So it's a good proxy.
Right.
But it was not drawn specifically for this purpose.
Exactly, and that's my point. And if we bring it down one or two streets too far in every neighborhood, in any neighborhood, we're going to exclude a few people who are going to be pretty upset, and that's my concern. I don't have a problem really with saying, and this is my own personal opinion, I'm one vote, that we shouldn't exclude it in certain areas, as you're talking, as one sign on the street. The problem is there's been no complaints. And if there's no complaints, why change it? That's my view. You go into some neighborhoods, Upper Belvedere, Upper Highlands, there's probably no signs. Why put an ordinance in if there's no complaints? Why are we adding laws or ordinances where there's no problems? And I'm only one vote, but that's a concern I have. Now, the others may differ. The full council may differ, but that's my point of view. If there's no complaints coming in, why break it if it's not fixed? And it's not broken because there's no cards out there. I think there's only 2 in the areas you're talking. Now, if that map specifically stated Beacon Street in your area that you're talking about back, I wouldn't have a problem with it. The problem is when you get into other areas, where does it come into the neighborhoods? And that's what I'm really concerned about. I don't mind looking at that down the road, but I'm concerned that that wasn't drawn up specifically for this reason. So if you cut a street or two out, you might really be putting someone, and that's my major concern. But that was it, and that's it at all. But I'm only one vote.
Oh, you know what? Councilor Laurie, good common sense. I don't want to leave anybody out who is in need.
Right.
Our whole reason for being here in the first place is to protect who needs and to stop who abuses. This is our intent. This is our intent. So with that being said, and with maybe we don't want to draw new lines, I would simply ask that when someone comes downtown and says, this is my name, this is my address, this is my registration, I would like a placard. Do we have anyone who physically goes out and looks at that property and says, yes, there's a need here, or I don't understand why you're requesting this if you have a 2-car driveway and a garage? If you have a 4-car driveway and on Beacon, on the hill, a carriage house. You see, things are happening because no one is physically going out and looking at the request. So maybe the whole crux of the parking situation in total would be, the request comes in, thank you, we'll check it out. In 10 days, you'll be notified in the mail if, yes, in fact, you are eligible, or no, I'm sorry, I don't see a need here. Please, put in writing what the need is.
Mr. Bakey?
It is correct that no such inspection occurs today, and that is because the current ordinance provides no ability to say no. There is no provision of the current ordinance that says if you have a driveway, you're not entitled to a placard. The current ordinance says you're entitled to a placard if you have a dwelling unit in the city of Lowell. No matter what, driveway, carriage barn, garage, it doesn't matter. So there's no point under the current ordinance in sending an inspector out because they have no authority to deny it. And the whole reason that we're, I think, having this discussion in part is because there really is very little enforcement authority associated with the existing ordinance. So as the council is, I think, wisely contemplating and again being very thoughtful about whether any changes should be made to the ordinance, if indeed it is the wish and the will of the council that there should be provisions where people who have driveways are not allowed to have these or anything like that, it needs to be written into the ordinance. And if that's the case, then absolutely our inspectors will enforce it. I should caution, though, that if there is a desire to have any kind of inspection process associated with this, then $10 is not a sufficient fee to cover the costs that the city will incur in issuing these. That may be still okay if you want the taxpayers to subsidize the difference, that's fine, but that's also a decision that the council needs to make.
And there it is, finally, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot enforce something that we are not overseeing. If somebody requests a placard, there needs to be someone that goes out and looks at the property. Now, we've thought about, well, geez, where will we put the 20 feet? Well, guess what? If we have someone that's going out and assessing the property and looking at it, they will say, you know something, you're right. You need a placard. 20 feet from the corner of your house will be your spot, not in the center of your frontage. So we'll have someone that will go out and make sure that, first of all, that there's a need. While they're there, they will say, this will be your spot. Then if it costs more money, then that cost belongs to the owner of the dwelling, so that it doesn't put any extra financial burden on anybody in the city who does not require these services.
Let me just say one thing. Who am I to say who requires the service? We have 7,000 of these signs out there. Who am I to say they don't deserve that service?
Well,
Now,
if they-
now, excuse me, let me finish.
Okay.
You talked about what came through in January. That was sent back from this council, okay? That was all denied. Now, I've sat here for 3 meetings with the others, and what I want to send to the council is something that will be approved. And I know the DPD's worked very hard on what was kicked back and what we're going forward with. What we want to do is end this once and for all. But I'll be quite honest, I don't want to be the caretaker on what one's needs are. I know you don't like the signs, but there are 7,000 signs out there for people for various reasons. And I, as an official, am not going to make a decision for 7,000 people whether they need that sign or not. And Councilor Mercy wanted to say something.
We did discuss this sometime at some length, quite a long period of time. But I will say from experience of the years that went by having placards in effect, I have numerous times received a concern from people that said, and I can give you a good example when you go up Aiken Avenue and the street leads to, I don't know, Hildreth Street. In that area there, their property is like a V, and the frontage of their property would not qualify them to have a placard. But they did, and I asked if they could get a placard on the side of their house with the door for the people that go in through the side door. That's not technically their spot and their official address, but it was allowed. And I don't see how that is unreasonable. To say that we're going to issue you this placard for 20 feet, it's a space. To designate the amount of space that one placard entails is perfect. But to say that it has to be 50 feet from the this or the that, no, I can't buy that. I can't buy that only from experience of having numerous people say that to me. Having said that, I'm concerned about the first issue that Marie Brown brought up, and she wanted to know about stickers associated with the placard of the dwelling. I remember we did go there. What is the status of that? Do we have it in an ordinance, or we didn't do that yet?
Well, the ordinance that was brought before the full council in January included adopting proposing a system whereby not only would you obtain a sign, but you would also, the signs would be numbered, and you would obtain, upon presentation of a valid registration of your vehicle at that address, as many as you like, you would obtain a sticker with a matching number that allowed that vehicle or those vehicles to park with that sign. That version of the ordinance was essentially rejected by the council and sent to the subcommittee. This subcommittee so far has not recommended bringing that component of it back. If the subcommittee wishes to do so, that certainly is something that can happen. But at the moment, the conversations with this subcommittee have not gotten to that place yet.
Because I can recall that the placard and one sticker was for the initial cost, and every sticker after that, for, like, let's say you had 3 children and they each needed a sticker, it would be a little bit more for each other additional sticker. But, so I think if we want to pursue that, if the subcommittee wants to.
The only question I have, and that's a good point, the stickers, you know the cars are, but unless there's a complaint made by someone to the police, who's going to look at the sticker?
That's exactly the reason for the sticker. If there is a complaint made to the police, all they have to do is go and look at the car.
Right.
Is there a sticker on it? They don't even have to knock on the door. There's either a sticker or there isn't.
Right.
So wouldn't that make things easy?
Who would be calling other than the owner to say the car's in a spot?
If there's no sticker and the car's parked there, then it doesn't belong there.
Right. But who would be calling the police to say there's a car in, you know what I'm saying? If
Whoever's in the dwelling that paid for that placard would be calling and saying, look, someone's in front of my house that shouldn't be. I wanna park.
Joe? Oh, I'm sorry.
That just makes sense. It just makes sense. And back to you, Mr. Laurie, as far as you want to put something across the board that's going to be approved,
Yeah.
well, I'm more concerned.
Well, at least try. Try. There's
Well,
9 votes.
I'm more concerned about doing what's right and amicable for all.
So
than
am I,
putting
but-
something in front of the board that's going to be approved.
No, I want to do something that's right, that's going to be approved. Now, we've talked about parking being 20 feet. As Councilor Mercia said, you can decide where that 20 feet's going to be. And you would have to have it on a pole, or you would have to have it on an item that's non-movable, that's your spot, okay? We've come to a $10 fee. I don't, and I guess the others, we've voted on it. How much do you want to charge a person? Now, we don't have an employee to go out, okay?
Well, we need one.
Well,
We need one, and that's why, you know what? I'm not going to talk about money right now. Money is something for you to decide. Money is something for the traffic engineer, and I don't know, maybe Ken LaValle, because his guys are out there enforcing it. And I'm sure there's going to be,
oh, yeah, go, yeah. No, go ahead, but
Excuse me, one second, Marie.
I just, no, Heidi.
Before we get carried away, should I just say who I am again?
No, sure.
My name's Heidi Miller. I live at 124 Beacon Street. As I'm listening, I go back to September 28th, when I brought to the attention to the other board members that I don't feel, no matter if you put something in place now or the original ordinance, this doesn't offer equal protection to every resident. If I live in a 3-family building and the man downstairs and his family have the plaque card, I'm out of luck. I'm parking down the street. If my street only holds 32 cars and there's 64 that belong there, are you really offering every resident equal protection? You're not. You have condo owners that pay $48 a month and park and walk home. The city owns some of these garages. These people are paying $48. Why isn't their first car $10? Wouldn't that offer equal protection to that person who owns a condo? I mean, I don't think you're looking at the big picture. I think you're just trying to protect people that have placards, and of course they're not going to complain. They're parking for less than 2 cents a day, while other people are walking, paying $48 a month. So I'm going to ask again, does this offer equal protection of the law? Someone else wants to talk.
Hello, my name's Harold. I live on 7 Fort Hill Street, or 7 Fort Hill Ave, and it's a 3-story house. It's a 3-family home, and there's a lot of abuse of the signs. You guys might not see it. I mean, a lot of things like you said about like seniors and things like that. I didn't even consider things like that. It's very true, but there's a lot of abuse for it. People put it in certain spots, and entire spots like in front of the house are blocked off so that nobody can park in front of it. So not to get into it any deeper, it's just that if I have a complaint, me and my mother both own a car, and then the people downstairs own 1 car, and the people upstairs own 1 car. There's only 3 spots in front of our house, and it's next to a fire hydrant. I can't park across the street from me because someone blocked off the entire thing, and whenever I park there, he says, I can't. What could I do about that?
You're absolutely right, and this is one of the reasons why we looked at it, and I think the first round, if you put in for a sign, you have to have 20 feet of parking, but you really can't do it to inconvenience other people, and I think that was part of the problems you had up on Christian Hill. So if you do get a placard, you can't place it if you have a driveway or there's a hydrant to inconvenience other people in the neighborhood. You get 20 feet, and but that came out earlier, yeah. Go ahead.
the thing is, Mr. Laurie, if you had someone going out and assessing the situation, and there's 70 feet of frontage in front of this house, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna put my sign on the 45th foot. So now, instead of having 3 spaces in front of that house, there's 1. So if there's a person that goes out and says, yes, there's a need, or no, there is not, first of all, that will get rid of a lot of what we're talking about. Second of all, if they go out and they look at the property and they say, well, geez, this 3-family home is on a triangle. You obviously can't park in front of your house. So we're going to take from West 6th Street back 20 feet on Lily Avenue, so you can park on this side street. This will be your spot. What that young man was just trying to say to you was, these people get signs, and they put them dead center in the middle of the property, and then there's nowhere for anywhere to park. If you had a man that went out and said, look, okay, you're right, you need one, you're entitled, from the corner of your house, 20 feet is your spot. That leaves the other 2 open. You see, you and I and everybody in this room are fair and amicable. We want to get along with our neighbors. But there's a lot of people out there that are absolutely I, me, myers. And those are the ones that need to be addressed. And unless there is somebody overseeing, one person in the traffic department, or maybe 2, because vacations, what have you, okay? It's a shared job or whatever. Somebody needs to be put in place that is going to take these requests, go out and physically look at the property, and yes or no, and say to that person, this is where we're going to put the sign. Now that's where the money comes in. You cannot, if you have to pay, I don't know, $35,000 a year, 40 years, 40,000, whatever it is you have to pay this person to keep track, because let's face it, once this person's put in place, not only is he going to be the regulator, but think about all the other information that this guy's gonna have at his disposal. He's gonna have who's transient and who's not. He's gonna have rollover of all kinds of things, which will be useful, especially when the census rolls around, which is probably a whole nother day. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to do this, and you want to have this in place in the city of Lowell, then you need to put somebody in charge. And somebody needs to be accountable for when somebody calls up and says, hey, what's going on over there on Avenue A? What's going on over there on Beacon Street? Somebody should be able to pick up the phone and say, you know what, Mr. Laurie? Phone's ringing off the hook. Give me a little while. I'll get back to you with that answer. And have the answer.
Okay, thank you. Did we direct in anything earlier on where these signs would have to be placed, sort of minimize? I thought we had talked about that.
No.
The language that this subcommittee has so far recommended essentially comes down to 5 points about the placement of the sign. The first is that said signs are securely affixed to a fence post or other legal exterior location visible to motorists from the street or way and from the parking space designated by the sign. Signs may not be placed inside a building. Second point is that the parking space designated as reserved under this section must be in a location where on-street parallel parking is legal under the general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and this Code of Ordinances. The designation of the parking space as reserved under this section shall not supersede any other applicable section of this code. Third, that parking spaces designated as reserved under this section shall be located in such a manner as to maximize remaining unreserved public on-street parking available to other motorists. Fourth, The property containing the dwelling house for whose residence the parking is reserved has at least 20 feet of legal lot frontage. And fifth, no more than one parking space may be reserved for any individual parcel under the provisions of this section, regardless of the number of buildings or dwelling units on the parcel, or the number of streets or ways that the parcel has frontage on.
Thank you. It was, and I knew we had approved it earlier, and until we get this approved, that is not enforceable. So I'm going to make a motion right now on your request to hire a person to go out and do the locations for. That's a motion. Any second? I'm making a
I'll
motion.
second it for discussion.
If it goes to the council, it could kick back this whole thing. Okay.
For discussion?
Okay, go ahead. Counselor,
That's not what this subcommittee was charged to do, I don't think.
I don't think it
That's
was either.
That's a separate thing. If you wanted to bring that into the council as another amendment, I guess that would be okay, but I'm not sure that, well, whatever, you made the motion, so I suppose we can vote on it, but didn't we have a motion on the floor about the fees? Didn't we?
well, we did, but the $10 fee, the $10 passed. Yeah. The $10 passed. We didn't get the renewal yet. So that's why I made this motion.
Okay.
If we can basically send what we want to the council, and the motion is that we would hire someone, or the DPD would have someone that would be in charge of going out and checking. Now that has a second, roll call.
Just a second.
Oh, it was for discussion.
Mr. Bakey told us when we were talking about the fees, he cautioned us that if we were going to set the fees at $10, then we shouldn't be also, after that, hiring a person. So if this motion's gonna pass, your motion, then we should revisit the fee structure.
will.
Because we're gonna have to increase the fees.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Counselor. Roll call. No.
No.
Counselor Madonza.
No?
3 nays.
Okay, so gentlemen, now what happens?
And we're not going to hire anyone. We're going to go exactly with the way the ordinance is written. If they place a sign where it doesn't maximize parking for their neighbors, they could lose their sign. That will be it. Now,
Okay, that's fair.
That'd be
If they
fine.
don't play by the rules, then they can't
then
play.
they're going to lose it. That's absolutely right.
Okay. All right, so that works.
Now, we had talked about a renewal sticker, a cost renewal sticker, which I think will take away some of these signs that you were concerned about, if we could go that far tonight. Any councilors want to make a statement here?
Is there a motion for this?
There will be, when someone, I think Councilor Mendonça had talked about $10.
Well, I didn't come up with the amount, but they said that would be the cost, it would cover the cost if there
Right.
were a $10 annual renewal fee of the work involved in the renewal. And this is to keep it relatively simple, not go to the registration. There are issues with that. We've already had complaints in other areas of people who lease cars. The address on the registration is not their own. It's the owner of the vehicle they lease it from. And there are many people that have the placards that don't even own a car. The reason for having them is so that caretakers that come to the home will have a parking space in front of their house, whether it be a family member or a nurse. So
Yeah,
there are other
duly
reasons
noted,
why they
duly
happen.
noted.
And so it becomes more complicated if we go that route. So this simple step of the annual renewal will hopefully discourage the abusers without inconveniencing those that really need it, and to a great degree.
Okay, so really the part that is like important about the multi-dwellings is a whole separate issue, and we'll need to come back again. Is that
Well, in the
correct?
multi-dwellings, as the ordinance stands today, it's the privilege is one parking space
One
per
location.
parcel, not per unit, and that's the equal protection part. Each one gets one. If we start doing per unit, then there'd be many that
Okay.
don't have the frontage to
Well,
do
the
the number
problem
of parking
with-
spaces.
The problem with
number of
that,
units.
Counselor, is along with the placard comes the paperwork. So whoever's holding the paperwork is the one who gets the space. This is where the stickers come in. Because if tenant number one of a three-family has the paperwork and wants to park there and is really not a nice person, they call the police and say, hey, the guy on the third floor is in my spot, but the guy on the third floor lives there.
Yeah, to me, again, it's one per parcel.
That's
It should be the owner that applies for this and decides who gets to use it, the owner of the property.
Oh, and then you're right back to equal protection, aren't you?
Well, that's the owner.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
It's drawing on to 6:30,
I know
so
that.
I
I'm
would
sorry.
suggest that we either take a vote on the fees and then recess the rest
Do
of this
do we have a
meeting,
motion
or-
on the renewal sticker?
I'll make the motion that we recommend that there be an annual renewal at the fee suggested by DPD, which is $10 annually.
Second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Chairman Laurie,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you. Now, one other item we talked about for renewal fees was excluding the elderly after a certain age. We had talked about the age of 70. You collect Social Security at 62. I had thought what might be fair is 60. Is any discussion with the other councilors?
Mr. Chairman, I thought 70 was a good number, but I have no objection to 60, and if that's the will of the subcommittee to go to 60, then I'm fine with going to 60. However, I'd point this out, that we just voted for a renewal fee so that we would catch people that
Right.
had it for an extended time. If it's going to be free for people over 60, how are those ever going to expire?
No,
What will be
Mayor,
the mechanism for that?
I was going to suggest two things.
on that question.
Yeah, one, they get a sticker. They do get a sticker because only that car can park there. And Councilman Donson.
Well, to Councilor Kennedy's question, I believe it was described before that they still have to do the renewal, but there's a checkoff where they get the senior abatement.
The form would have a check off.
And now, in regards to the senior abatement, rather than define a whole new category, that's why I'd suggest we stick with the ones that they get now, the senior abatement, that's already defined. I mean, some people may retire at 62. I won't be able to until I'm 67, so, because they're changing the Social Security rules.
So the age
And
is
that's going to creep up. So by having another definition that is already used by the city, whatever that becomes, we'll stick with that.
Okay.
So we're sticking with 70?
70.
Okay.
It's 70 right now,
Yeah.
but
So
whatever that
The
definition is.
That's
renewal
fine.
fee would not be for anyone over the age of 70. Can we have a roll call on that?
Counselor Laurie,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
3 yeas.
It's almost 6:30. I think we've just about come to a conclusion on what we wanted tonight. How about one-way streets? I think we might be able to get that, and there was some discussion on excluding one-way streets from place cards. No?
Yeah, I think it'll become too complicated to deal with, and I just as soon move forward with the process and get these other issues dealt with.
We can do this, and we'll do it one more week on the one-way streets. We'll hold this in a, close this out. Okay. We're going to adjourn this with what we have. We'll send this to the council next week, and we'll look at one-way streets in a future date. Is that okay? And we can even look at your, we can do that. We'll take what we have, we'll send it to the council next week, and we can actually look at two things. Taking that map and maybe adjusting a little bit to have areas where we can exclude the no parking signs, and we'll look at the one-way streets. And we'll set up a map specifically for the parking signs, which I think might satisfy just about everybody there. We're in adjournment here. Thank you.